Someone asked, like, how did I learn to, like, trust again, like, after dealing with, like, narcissistic and toxic people? And because if you guys don't know, like, I'm now engaged and all that, and so I've gone through all of it. Like, I've gone through the dating after narcissism, I've gone through, like, the obsessive thinking cycle after narcissism, like, all the things. And for me, like, I think that one of the biggest issues is it's really not learning how to trust other people again. I think what the biggest issue for it, or not issue, but like the biggest thing with it is learning how to trust yourself again. Because when it comes to trusting other people, ultimately it's just a choice. Like, we make the decision to put our trust back into other people, or into someone because of certain characteristics that we see. And oh, thank you for the heart. Because of characteristics that we see, and just like that behaviors match words and all of that, and ultimately it's just a choice. But one of the key aspects to it is learning to trust yourself and trusting your own intuition. And if we are honest with ourselves, like if we've dealt with narcissistic and toxic people in the past, like there's been things that we've seen and there were red flags that we saw, but we made some sort of decision to ignore them for whatever reason. There was some narrative that was going on in our head that outweighed the red flags that we saw. And unfortunately, we just got a really hard lesson on what happens when we ignore our intuition. So that's, like, I think one of the hardest things to do is just having that faith within ourselves that we see it, we recognize it, and we do something about it. So that's just a little free nugget. I think my husband may be gaslighting me. If you, okay. We can talk about gaslighting in general, just in general, so you can kind of take away from it what you want to. So essentially, what gaslighting is it's where someone is unable to be in a reality where they accept responsibility for them playing a role in the situation that they're in. Like, they're just unable to do that for whatever reason, whether it's just a subconscious thing, whether it's just a conscious decision that they're making, or it's just kind of who they are and they can't help themselves. And what they do is they create this, like, alternate reality in their mind where it eliminates their responsibility of the situation. And the crazy thing about it is like, especially with, like, narcissistic and toxic people, what this is like a lifestyle pattern for them. They truly believe that reality that they've created. It's, you know, my mom used to tell me about certain people in our family even that they've told the same lie over and over and over again, that they, like, believe their own lie at this point. And it's really kind of that situation. Like, my narcissistic ex, one of the things that he lied about a lot was that he served in the military for 4 years. Reality was he never made it past basic training, but he would have these, like, stories about his military days, like specific stories about, like, his unit and, like, who was in it and, like, all this stuff. And I don't know if he just stole someone else's stories, because what's weird is, like, I have a military family, so, like, I kind of know a little bit. I wasn't in it, but, like, I know enough to know if, like, the stories have some validity or not. And the only thing that made me start to, like, question whether or not this was right was, like, the timelines that he was saying didn't add up. And so when I would question him on that, I would be gaslit, and I would be told, like, why would I lie about this? Why, you know, why can't you just trust me? You know, why do I have to prove this to you, and blah, 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 blah. And it would all be made out that I was insecure, that I was crazy, or that I was making him out to be a liar and this and that. And I think at this point, like, he really believes in his mind that he was in the military for 4 years. Like, he has just told this story so often that it's become his reality. And that's just the unfortunate thing with people that live in a life of gaslighting people, is that there's no reasoning with them, and they're never going to accept that responsibility. It just is who they are. Yeah, nothing is his fault and it's all my fault. That's, like, the basis of gaslighting for sure. And a lot of times, like, they'll do that to like, cover up what they're doing. You know, like what you're saying, he pays me all this affection and kind of does what he does. They do that to distract you. Like, they do that to kind of veer your attention off. It's intentional. So if you guys have any questions in general about like narcissistic terms that you hear thrown around a lot, if you have just questions about me, good afternoon from New York City. Hopefully we're talking about doing a meet and greet in New York one day, and that would be so cool. I would love to go. What I mean by like terms is like gaslighting or like deflection or rumination, or like if you've heard these like phrases or words that you may not know what they mean, you can feel free to ask those. And if I know them, I will answer and explain them. If I don't, I will tell you I don't. There's one I actually need to look up that apparently is floating around right now. It's a newer one. It's called yellow rocking, and I don't really know what that one is. I actually meant to look that up the other day. He asks me what's wrong all the time. How does that usually turn out? Like, does it usually end up into an argument because you start to tell how you feel, and then it spouts into an argument? Like, what does the outcome of that usually look like? I think he knows what's wrong, but in an antagonistic way. Okay, yeah. So I think my ex used to do this on purpose as well. And I've just heard stories where they would ask like, what's wrong? And what that does is like, it makes it look like they're trying to be supportive because they're like, oh, what's wrong? And they want to sit down and be helpful and let you voice your feelings. And then it was interesting. Anytime I would voice if something was wrong outside of our relationship, like if something was wrong because of work or like my kid's mom or just anything that didn't have to do with him, he would be supportive-ish where he would like sit there and listen. But what was funny is when I started thinking back on it with more clarity, a lot of times he was just kind of sitting there just waiting for me to stop talking so that way he could turn it back into himself or just move on with the subject or whatever. But he did that where he would sit down and ask what was wrong, because I remember at one point in time I told him, like, I feel like we talk about your day all the time and we talk about what goes on with you, but like I don't have the opportunity to do that with me. So he would do that to like appease me because I brought this up. But it's still, nothing really changed. It was just essentially he was pacifying me to just let me talk. But anytime where I said that I was upset about something that he did, it always turned into an argument. It was always, you're just bringing up the past, or you're just insecure, you're just this, or you're just that. Because again, he's unable to accept responsibility for his actions. And so I think, and then at some point in time, I just finally got to where I just stopped telling him. Like, I would just talk to other people about what I was upset about with him because I was just mentally exhausted from arguing all the time. So again, I think that's very intentional when they even ask, like, what's wrong? If it's not about them, then sure, it's fine-ish. But if it is, like, it's always gonna, well, I'm not gonna say for everyone, but for me, it always led to an argument. Greetings from Finland. Hello from Finland. My ex would always try to tell me I was in a bad mood when I wasn't, and he would do it until I ended up getting mad, and he used to start fights. Gosh. Yes, that's kind of like a reactive abuse kind of situation, and if you've not heard of reactive abuse, it's essentially where like a narcissist or toxic person will like poke and prod you as much as you can handle until you like hit the point of like your breaking point, essentially, because every human being has a breaking point. Like, we can only take so much from people until we just like explode. So, and some people are able to do that for a longer period of time, where they just bottle it up and hold it in and all of this. But other times, like, maybe we have a little bit of a shorter fuse, I guess, maybe, I don't know, but they'll like poke and prod you until you get to this point where you do explode. And then it's kind of like they sit back and watch their artwork, and admire their show that they just created. And they're like, maybe you should go see someone. Like, you just seem to be really on edge. Like, are you okay? And now all of a sudden it's like you're the crazy one. And again, they do that on purpose because they're almost like trying to build this like evidence base against you, that you are the problem and that you were the crazy one. So that, again, this is all done very, like, this is the thing about narcissistic and toxic people. They're not dumb. Like, they're pretty, it takes a certain level of intelligence to be that manipulative. They're pretty smart when it comes to this kind of stuff. It's just, they take advantage of like our naiveness and our ignorance that people are capable of these kind of behaviors. Because I know for me, I was never exposed to this kind of behaviors with somebody before, ever. So I just thought, he just has never been in a healthy relationship before. Like, if I just show him what a healthy relationship is, like, this will stop. It'll eventually go away. And it was never going to go away. He was never going to change. It is who he is. I doubt he's changed at all. It's very, very rare that people like this change. Is it possible? Yes. Is it likely? No. And I'm just glad that I just got done at one point in time and just stopped trying to wait for him to get better and started living my life again. I was the toxic one, and guess what? I still am. Love it. That, I kind of embraced the fact that I was always going to be the villain in his story. He was never going to change. So if that is what I have to be in his story, I would rather be that in his story than be a part of his story at all. Or anybody else for that matter, because I know my own truth and I'm able now to stand firm in my truth and own my story enough that the stories of other people matter less and less. So if that's how you want to view me, then that's how you want to view me, honey. And I'll keep moving on with my life. You want to come say hi? She always has to make one appearance. This is Duchess. Seeing a therapist shouldn't be so weaponized. I agree, but it is. They'll weaponize anything, honestly. Because yeah, I was seeing I kind of stopped seeing a therapist while I was seeing him, but it is weaponized that you're the problem. Talk about spiritual abuse in toxic relationships. Can you clarify? And I just want to make sure I answer the question properly. Because the way I interpret that, let me say this. The way I interpret that question is that there's a spiritual element to it, but I don't know if that's what you mean. So I just want to answer it the way that you're asking it, if that makes sense. Oh, religious abuse. Oh, girl, I can talk about that. Okay. So I was raised Southern Baptist, and then I switched to Pentecostal when I was 16. I was always very, very involved in the church, worship pastor, youth leader, all this kind of stuff. So I was very involved in the inner workings of church, small churches and large churches. So I'll just kind of tell you the outcome of it. When I ended up coming out of the closet, I was at a very large church that's very well known in the DFW area. I was a part of the worship team, and essentially I just got ghosted. There was no conversation that was had. There was nothing. I was literally just taken off the schedule and was never put back on. So I was essentially kicked out without being kicked out. Here's the problem with religious abuse in general, or just there is a ton of narcissism in religious circles. And I'm going to be very clear. I am still a Christian. My issue is not with my relationship with Christ. My issue is the church. That we're just going to say that. With that said, I'm also not asking people to subscribe to my beliefs. You should have your belief and I will have mine. So this is my experience dealing with the church. Is that okay? Well, let me ask this before I continue, because there's two elements that I can talk about: religious abuse, within a family dynamic, or just actually in the church. What would y'all rather hear about? I really should talk about this more on my channel. I don't talk about it very often, but I really should. In the family. Okay. So when you're dealing with religious abuse in the family, again, it's all kind of from the same root. It's all about image. Like, narcissists are all about the image that they present, the representation that they have to other people. So when you do things like, that's why like pastors' kids have such a high stigma. Like, as if you've heard about this, if you've been in religious circles at all, the pastors' kids were always the ones you had to watch out for, right? Because they were the troublemakers most of the time. And if you think about it, when you were raised in that environment, I also want to be very clear, this did not come from my parents. Other members of my family, not necessarily my parents. When you are dealing with people that have a reputation in their church or a reputation in a religious circle, it is all about image. And if you do anything that distorts that image that they have worked so hard to create, you have now become ostracized. You have now become the black sheep. You are labeled as the problem child. You are labeled as, you are met with such, they're going to lash out. That's the easiest way to say it. They're going to lash out onto you because you are disturbing the image. So, for example, let's say that you do have a member in the family that comes out. They probably won't talk about them anymore. Like, it's almost going to be kind of like they don't exist in that family dynamic. So maybe before, when you were toting the line and you were doing everything that was expected of you, like, they bragged about you on social media, they talked about you to their friends, you know, they were always, you know, your biggest cheerleader and this and that, because you were doing what you needed to do to help them paint this canvas that's being presented to everybody else. Well, the moment that this person, let's say they come out of the closet, the moment that they do that, they have now created like they've ruined that canvas in some way, form, or fashion. So in order to keep that canvas, they're just going to cut that part of the canvas out. So maybe now they don't really talk about you on social media anymore. Maybe they don't talk about you in a family at all. They'll maybe talk about their kid, like your kids, but not you. You know, they'll do this kind of like dog whistling thing. Well, they'll bring up topics of conversation to everybody else, like around them, where it sounds like normal conversation to them, but it's really directed to you. Like, as soon as you walk into the room, this is an example. Let's say that, you know, you are someone that, I don't know, we'll just keep the gay example. It's the easiest one. So let's say you're a member of the LGBTQ community in the family. You walk into the room, all of a sudden this religious higher up in your family starts talking about the New Age church, and the problem with this, you know, forward-thinking churches is that all they do is just go based on how they feel, and that's not biblical. And, you know, it's not about how you feel, it's about what the truth is and about what God's word says, and blah, 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 blah. To everyone else around them, this just sounds like normal conversation, just something that's heavy on their heart, you know what I mean? But it's clearly about you, and it's about where you stand, and it's about your beliefs, right? That's passive aggressive AF. And that's what they do. They like do anything that they can to make you feel out of place and like you are the problem. So I need to start posting more content on this so that way I can communicate myself a little clearly. That's the only downside with me being on lives, is that my brain runs like a mile a minute, so I don't get it clear and concise. But I will start talking about that on my channel a little bit more. I've made a couple of videos about it. But essentially, just in a religious abuse dynamic within a family, they use their religion to abuse you. Ultimately, that's the end of the day. They will, instead of it being about love, and instead of it being about everything that the Bible actually stands for and everything that Jesus stood for, it's used to manipulate, abuse, and control you, and also keep you in a box that fits the image that they're creating. We'll just sum it up with that. Again, sorry, that's the downside with me on lives. As I go down rabbit holes. Leaving both toxic relationships, one BPD, one an ARC, being told I'm unforgiving and going to hell. Oh God, I'm sorry. Tips on dealing with a narcissistic ex at work. I left him in August. No contact now, but back to work soon. So what I would suggest, if you're in a position where you work with your narcissistic ex, which actually this happens quite a bit, the biggest thing that I would suggest to you would be to change up your routines at work. So if you are used to going to the same place at the same time, like if you have a consistent pattern that they know about your pattern, change up the pattern. Because if you do that, then you can kind of, one of two things is going to happen. They're either going to kind of like try to hoover you back in and get a reaction out of you and do whatever they want to do, or they're going to act like nothing happened in this, or that you like never existed. There's a couple of different ways that it could go, really. But kind of altering your, like changing up your patterns and routines at work will throw them off enough to where, like, at least no matter what they try to do, it's going to be a little bit more difficult for them to like find you when you're not like actively working. And what I mean by that is like, again, if you take the same break every day, if you go to the same spot to eat your lunch every day, if you have like these routines that they know about, change those routines up. And it's also kind of fun to just kind of change it up too and just make it a little bit different, because in a way you're kind of reclaiming that environment for yourself by doing it in a different way. So that's one thing I would suggest. Trey, you've made my life better. Thank you. Thank you for your videos. You've helped me so much. I really appreciate you guys saying that. How do you anticipate the reaction when you tell them you're going to leave so you can prepare? Okay, so the thing with narcissistic and toxic people, there's a lot of like tendencies, like they tend to do things, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's black and white. For example, if you go no contact, it's very common for them to like get a texting app and text you with like these 4 different phone numbers and like all that kind of stuff. But that doesn't mean they all do that. My narcissistic ex never did that. He never contacted me again. So, you know your narcissistic partner better than anybody. I knew that my ex was probably not going to contact me because he likes to live in this whole I'm the victim world, and he tried really hard to stay friends with me after we broke up, right? So I knew that when I blocked him and went no contact, he wasn't necessarily going, I would be very surprised if he did reach out to me, because I knew he was going to, again, take more the victim approach of, well, see, I tried to stay friends with him and then he just ended up blocking me, so I mean, why would I reach out to him? Turns out that's pretty much what happened. He never reached out to me. Well, maybe one time on a fake Snapchat account, but that was later down the road. So you know them better than anything. So your initial instinct of how they're going to react and how they're going to respond is most likely going to be correct. So what you can do is sit down and kind of do this like mental prep with yourself where you play that situation out in your mind. So that way, if it does happen, it's not the first time that you're living it, because in your mind, you've already lived this experience. So you can kind of do what's called like a mental practice of that situation. And sorry, I just saw a comment where it says kids are involved, so I can't gray rock. You can, even if you're co-parenting, you can gray rock. Gray rocking is about how you respond to them. So you can answer their questions and you can talk to them about your kids and all of that, but that doesn't mean that you have to react. Like gray rocking is all about keeping this all very blank, 1-word answers, minimal answers, lack of feelings associated. You might be dying on the inside, you might be pissed off on the inside, but on the outside there's no fuel for them because they fuel off of our reactions. So you can still gray rock with kids, because it actually doesn't have to do with like lack of kids or not. It's how you respond to them and how they react. Is it common for reactions to be over the top if you tell them that you leave? Yes. Is it common that it's a over the top in a scary way? It could be over the top in a dramatic, like, why would you abandon me kind of way. Or if they think it's going to hurt you more to just not react and just say bye, then they'll do that too. Again, you know your partner more than anybody else. So whatever your first instinct when you think about it is, you're most likely right. Hey you guys, thank you for watching this video. I wanted to come on here real quick and make sure that you knew that my course, Breaking Free from Rumination, is now live and available. This course is designed to help you heal from the pain of narcissistic abuse, specifically the betrayal, and help you regain your peace by overcoming this obsessive thinking cycle that we all find ourselves in. I really truly believe that this course is going to help you do in 6 weeks what took me 6 months, because I was having to figure this out all on my own. So I took everything, all of the tips, all of the tricks, combined it into a 6-week course with specific homework, specific strategies, with scientific based articles. There's multiple different videos from authors and other creators to help explain all the parts that keep us stuck in this obsessive thinking cycle. So please don't wait any longer. It is available for you now. Just go to the About Me section in my profile, go to the Beacons link, and you'll find it right there. Please continue to follow me for all of my free content on this platform. And as always, I am so grateful to be a part of your human journey.